and as we shift a little bit, but it is interesting to me because I have people all the time telling me that there's these things that hold them back from chasing that calling that you've described. And I think one of them is, I mean, maybe I'm wrong about that, but you grew up in the church, your dad was a pastor, you become one. I'm sure the family was very proud of that, right?
Yeah.
You'd achieved so much.
Yeah.
I imagine that adds to the difficulty that your family was so proud of something you had already been accomplishing. I find people all the time say that one of the things that holds them back is, well, my family doesn't support what I'm about to go do. Do you see that too?
All the time, and I'm glad you brought it up. I wrote a book, I don't know, maybe 8-10 years ago called Put Your Dream to the Test.
Okay.
And it's just a good solid book. And in it, the kind of the thesis of that book was that the more valid reasons you have to accomplish a dream, the higher the odds are that you will. Oh, wow. Now that's a powerful thesis. So I mean, there's no cotton candy here. There's no hype stuff here.
Yes.
And so I basically looked at what are the valid reasons to achieve a dream, and there were 10 of them.
Okay.
And so I formed it in a way of questions. But the first question is your dream really your dream? And that's where we start, Ed. Because can I tell you something? If your dream isn't really your dream, ain't going to work. And I tell people in the book, hey, the first dream we have isn't our dream. It's our parents' dream.
So
my mom and dad, when I was 7, they thought I was going to be a musician. And so I'm taking piano lessons from the 7 years old to about 13. I wasn't any good in piano.
It wasn't your giftedness.
It wasn't my gift, but they're so proud. They go to my recitals and clap. You see, I'm living their dream. I'm playing the piano. I can't play the piano. I'm not very good at it. I'm not gifted, but it doesn't matter. I'm living their dream. Yeah. So what I tell people all the time is we start off our life living someone else's dream, probably our parents. So what happens is a lot of people as adults, they never switch.
So true.
And so they're still living someone else's dream. And again, it's like a biblical analogy. It's King, or David before he was king, putting on King Saul's armor. Yes. It's not fitting, and he's staggering around there. Well, I know a lot of people, they're putting on someone else's armor, and they just aren't going to achieve because it's not who they are. It's not their dream.
Yeah, that's, by the way, everybody listening, to just go back about 1.5 minutes and listen to that again, please, because that is so absolutely golden true. So that was a difficult decision for you, I assume.
It was a difficult decision for me because all I ever knew was pastoring. So let's start there.
Yeah.
It wasn't a difficult decision for me as far as knowing where I was going to go.
Yep.
So I think a lot of times we have clarity on where we should go, but there's a lot of emotion that holds us back.
Sure.
And what was holding me back was the fact that this is what I've known, this is what I studied for, this is what my degrees are, I'm a theologue. And so when I made that transition, Ed, I had 3 very uphill, challenging, difficult years because I had to take the principles I taught and I had to address them entirely different.
Sure.
I mean, hey, I can't go in the business community and say, now let's turn in our Bibles.
Right.
And by the way, the worship team, if they'll come on right now, do we have the choir? I don't have any of that stuff.
Sure.
So now I've got to take, now here's what's beautiful. The leadership principles that I teach and write in books, they all have a biblical foundation.
Yes.
But I tell anybody, I said, in case that bothers you, you tell me what your leadership principles are, and I'll tell you where the Scripture is.
I love
because
it. Right.
it's all, the greatest leadership book ever written was the Bible. And in fact, I have one of my most wonderful favorite projects was that they asked me to take the Bible and put my leadership lessons in it. And so it's the Maxwell Leadership Bible.
Saw that.
I'm telling you, Ed, I have probably 800 lessons in that now.
Yes.
And so you just read a little scripture, and here's another lesson that you can apply into your life. But the reason I can do that is because all the leadership principles I teach, they're all biblically based and have a foundation for it. So now I'm going to a new crowd. So the principles, I got those. But now I have to illustrate them different, and I have very little business experience. So what I did, and I think this is what will be really, hopefully this will be helpful to you. Whenever you're making a transition that's kind of out of your strength zone, or certainly brand new like this was, I ask a lot of questions and I listened. And so I just sit down with people like you that are highly successful in business, and I'd say, okay, let me ask you some questions. And I'd go and I'd ask you questions I learned from you, and I'd take a lot of notes, and I'd pull away and say, okay, now this is how Ed did it, and this is what Ed thinks, and I think I could apply this there. And I spent 3 years humbling myself and being very teachable and saying, I just want to learn. I just want to learn. Because I knew that I had the leadership principles. But principles that are good without application or connection are principles that aren't going to work for anybody. So as a communicator, I know that, so a lot of people, they say, well, I've got this great idea. It doesn't matter if you can't communicate the great idea, it isn't going to go anywhere. So I knew that now I had to connect, I had to communicate. And so I'm asking a lot of questions, and it took me about 3 years to get my rhythm, but I got it.
Yeah, obviously.
And today, today I love the secular business world because it gives me a chance to add value to them. It gives me a chance at times to be salt and light in their lives, and it's a really good thing.
Amazing. Who thinks a guy leaving that church ends up becoming the most prolific, successful business leadership author of all time?
It makes no sense.
It's pretty incredible. I think what you said is really true, though, because I think first off, that dream starts a certain size and grows. The other thing, I talked about this with yesterday. Somebody, I think you'll agree with me on this. Also, the path to getting there will reveal itself as you go. I think oftentimes people think I have to know every single step in order to get to this ultimate vision.
Come on.
And it doesn't work that way, right? You have to get it revealed to you.
It only works that way in a book.
Yeah, right.
Because what I tell you, see, here, what's this? I'm responsible, Ed, to move on what I see today. Mm-hmm. There's a whole bunch of people, they're wanting to hold and not move because they don't see 3 days, 5 days, 2 years out, whatever. And what I'm saying is, it's kind of like the lights of a car. If I go to the parking lot at night, turn on the lights and say, oh my gosh, I can't go anywhere, I don't see my house.
Right.
Well, no. Get in the car and start moving in the direction you're supposed to move in. And guess what? You only get about 300 feet of light.
Right.
You don't get 7 miles of light. You don't get to see your house. You got to utilize the light you got so that you can get to where you want to go. And so many people, they're uncomfortable with that light because it's not long enough. And what's around the corner? And the whole issue is you don't know what's around the corner until you go around the corner.
Oh gosh, that's so good.
And so you so you have to be very comfortable, which I am. You have to be very comfortable with traveling, not having all the answers.
So true.
But can I tell you something? The only way you get all the answers is to go all the way through.
Absolutely.
You don't get all the answers on this side. And so if I've got to have it lined up and straight and right, and I feel comfortable with it, then I'll never be the leader. And I really believe this, Ed. I believe a lot of leaders fall short because they're unwilling to take what they know now and act on it. And so therefore, they never get to know what they could know.
Oh my gosh.
I believe that.
That is an absolute fact.
Yeah.
That is the number one thing when I'm coaching people is their unwillingness to act now on what they know so that what they could know would be revealed to them.
Absolutely.
That's so wonderful.
Yeah.
All right, you're blowing my mind. So people will be so upset with me if I have the expert in the world on leadership in front of me. We don't talk a little bit about that exact specific topic on leadership. So
I've talked on it one other time, so let's
is that right? Oh wow!
Let's give it a shot. See if I can.
You'll be okay.
Let's see if I can do it the second time.
You'll be okay.
You may have to encourage me a little bit
I'll
here,
pull
but
you
we'll see what we can do. Yeah, absolutely. Lift me up a little bit.
I'll do what I can, brother.
Hey, here's what I was thinking about as you were just talking. I was thinking about this lesson that John gave us, and then the conversation we had with Jake about the gratitude and the anticipation. And here's what I was thinking. I was thinking about the weight that you carry right now of where we're going in the future of our enterprise. And I was thinking of the gratitude that all of us have for John and the point that we've gotten to today because we stand on his shoulders, but yet we have this anticipation of what is to come in the future. And I was thinking about, John talks about in his first point here, he says, hey, you reveal your potential by where you focus. And a lot of times running our corporate division, will talk to our team members, I'll talk to our customers, to try to figure out what are their future needs. You're sitting in a seat right now where you're talking to John every day about what is it that is in the future? What do you desire? What's inside your heart for that? What do you want your legacy to be? And so I just want to open up right here, and I want to say, man, you are having the opportunity to ride shotgun with a guy that's in essence explaining to you on a daily basis. You're seeing them live it out, what the future is for our enterprise. Talk a little bit about that. Talk a little bit about the weight of focusing on the future and everything that you're learning from John as you're going through and leading our enterprise in this experience.
Well, it's so thank you, Chris. And let me be relatable, I think, to most every one of our podcast listeners. Have you ever stepped into the shoes of a previous leader,
Yeah.
set out to define the future, and you spent more time focusing on what they did right or what they did wrong?
Mm.
And all of us leaders do that. We're tempted. We want to come in and we want to make a splash. But yet, if the leader that we are superseding or succeeding, if they're a great leader, we have a temptation to be just like that leader. Oh, they did this, so I better do this because I don't want to mess up the mojo, the good formula of success. Or some of us have probably had the assignment of following a poor leader, and we wanted to come out with a bang and show what they did wrong and that we are different. I believe both perspectives are incorrect. Focusing on the future is you, leader, me, leader, focusing on our best self. It's like putting on the armor of somebody else. King David, the old king of Israel that followed Saul, and Saul wanted him to put on his armor to go fight the giant in the famous story. And David was like, man, I can't do this. I just got to go out with my sling and my stone, and I got to do something. Well, in following John, the days that are not so good are the days I realize how incredible he is, how I will never be as good as John, and how I don't know if I can envision a future brighter than John. All that's comparative.
Yes.
The days that I were struggling when I did follow more difficult leaders was the day when I went, oh, they did it like this, but I want to do it like this. They did this, but that didn't work for them. I want to do this. Neither one brings out the best of me. Where I get, and you get, podcast listeners, where we get the greatest traction is when we go, this is what we've been given. This is what we're grateful for. We're thankful for it. These are the shoulders, the broad shoulders that I stand on. But this is the potential of where me and my team can go. And as you focus on the future, one of the greatest things that I can give you, don't do it with comparative analysis. This is what was so good about the previous leader. This is what was so bad about the previous leader. This is how I'm going to be different. Focus on the opportunity and the anticipation of you becoming the best version of you. And as a company leader, the day that John says about writing books, Chris, you've heard him say this. The people ask him all the time, John Maxwell, what's your favorite book out of 86? And he says, the one I'm writing now, which is so funny. And people kind of laugh, of course, yeah, John, of course. But no, it's really true. In fact, then John carries on and makes that point much more poignant. He says, the day I'm not most excited about what I'm doing right now is the day I should have hung up the hat and stopped. Now, to me and you, Chris, the day that we believe yesterday was better than what we can make and anticipate for tomorrow is the day we need to stop leading the organization.
That's so good.
Listen to me, leaders. I want to bang on my home office desk right now.
Yes.
Stop glorifying the good old days and start anticipating the exceptional days ahead. That's the best way to embrace the future.
Yeah, John actually, in point number 3, exactly what you just said, right? He says, double-minded focus depletes the energy. And listen, what you're saying to us is honor our traditions, honor the purpose of our organization, honor the culture. And if you do that, right, that will help you power and create a new future. But don't stay there, right? Leaders are change agents. We talk about that a lot. And as you begin to think about that, leaders, I think what Mark's challenging us to do is we have got to be a change agent. And we've heard John say all the time, right, that the future comes fast. And I think you're feeling that as a leader. I think we feel that. And as leaders, we need to be looking out and focusing on the future. I think his statement is that leaders should see more, right? And before others, see further, all those things that we need to be focusing on. I think you just explained to us is so important.
Yeah, and let me say one more thing. I want to highlight, pull out something that John said, but it just really underscores and kind of kind of synthesizes what you and I've been talking about right here. John said, you can't have a better tomorrow by focusing on yesterday. It's impossible. You can appreciate yesterday and have a better tomorrow. You can be grateful, back to the week of Thanksgiving. You can be grateful. But if you are focusing on yesterday, you cannot be certain of a better tomorrow because you're looking back. You're focusing on the past, and the past should be stood on, not visualized.
Number one, he said, the best thing about the future is that it only comes one day at a time. I love that Abraham Lincoln quote. But I wrote down the question, and I would love to hear from you on this. But how do you approach today, considering the situations, relationships, and activities that can trap you in the now? But how do you approach today with tomorrow in mind?
Yeah, I've been really studying this concept of offering certainty in uncertain times, this idea of offering clarity when you're leading where you've never led before. And you guys on the podcast, you've heard me reference Andy Stanley. You've heard me reference this concept multiple times. Tracy, I'll tell you where I am today. I work hard to get clarity for today so that I can have tomorrow's step in an action item. So this is where we are today. What do I need to do today, tomorrow, to ensure I act on what we do? In other words, it's the statement that, again, I believe so strongly that we've got to have wisdom as leaders, right? We've got to have wisdom. But wisdom's just one piece of it. When we get wisdom to know what it is that we need to do, there is a second element, and that is the courage to do it. It's this belief, this certainty that, yes, we as leaders need to have clarity of where we are, properly assess it, properly articulate it, but then to challenge people to go to the next step, the next level, the next accomplishment. And as a leader today, I have found in all the uncertainty that we face in today's leadership climate, being clear on where we are and being certain of what the next step is great leadership that people can follow. I don't think people can follow a leader that doesn't know, and often we don't know. I don't believe believe people can follow a leader that is stationary. They can hang out with them. They can chill. We can sit around and talk about the good old days, but there has to be movement for there to be followership. So leaders, what I'm doing, what I challenge you to do is get bedrock clear on where you are today and bedrock clear on the next step from where you are today to head in the right direction.
I love that you say that, and I would love to hear you expand a little bit more, because I'm thinking specifically about a leadership situation that I'm in right now, and I'm trying to get clear on some things, but it's a little fuzzy, and I'm trying to gain clarity by asking questions, right? And so John talks about daily we are either repairing or preparing. And so when a situation is fuzzy and we as leaders are trying to gain clarity through kind of a hazy view, what are some steps that you take outside of asking questions, maybe, or maybe that's just all that it is, the answer is, but when things are fuzzy and you're trying to gain clarity for the next steps for tomorrow for the team, how do you handle that?
Well, I think that sometimes, so I spent a lot of time over the last 3 years talking about we need to listen, we need to learn, and then we need to lead. Don't lead until you've learned something. Don't try to move until there's something tangible, applicable to put into action. And I agree with that. But I think sometimes, to your question, sometimes today's questions leads to an additional set of questions tomorrow, right? But don't ever leave an environment and say, well, I did good. I led today. I asked questions. No, questions lead to conclusions, and conclusions lead to next steps. Even if the next step says, I need to expand the people I'm asking this question to, or I need to circle back and get more information, never leave a moment where you take something in without putting and tagging an application step to what you took in. Later on in the lesson, I was going to talk a little bit about this, but every day, Tracy, I've learned to ask myself 2 questions as a leader. What did I learn? How am I going to apply it? What did I learn? How am I going to apply it? And when you answer the question, what did I learn? Sometimes you can become a glutton for information. You can become obese with content and gold nuggets. The only way you're going to stay lean and effective and healthy in your leadership is if you apply what you take in. And that is the key. It is learning. I've watched a lot of people apply, and they need to slow down and learn something. But it is in tandem. Learn, then act. Learn and then act.
I love that. I love how it's always about being in movement, even if you have to slow your pace just a little bit, but it's always putting it immediately into action. Okay, last question. I said at the beginning we would talk about recharge, but first he hits on 5 steps to make our future bigger than our past. And he talks about reviewing. If you wouldn't mind just kind of bullet pointing these because we're closing out on our time. How often do you review? How often and with who do you reflect? He talks about recovering. What does that look like for you? If you can kind of bullet point those. Rearrange. What does that look like for you? And then recharge. How often and what does recharge look for you, Mark Cole?
So I review every day. There's something to review. I've overstressed this in this meeting. What am I going to apply what I learned today? That is a review question. Reflection is very interesting to me. I get my leadership team, when they hear what I'm getting ready to say, they're going to say the silent nod, or some of them are kind of charismatic. So they're going to say, amen, very loud. Okay, right? I'm a verbal processor. So oftentimes in leadership meetings, I am verbally processing my thoughts because I need to get them out and read the crowd and hear myself talk, which cracks me up, and to watch how people respond to what I'm saying. So reflection for me comes in community. I am a verbal processor. Reflection is best when I am verbalizing what I am reflecting on. Recovery is very interesting to me. Recovery, I'm a borderline. If any of you have taken Myers-Briggs personality test, I'm a borderline. I am an extrovert, but I'm borderline because I really recharge. I really recover alone. Every end of the year, I go through a recovering. I call it an annual review with me. There are many years that it is an annual recovery from me so I can go be a better me the next year, right? Rearranging, I don't rearrange probably as much or as effectively as some, because I'm a law of navigation guy. When I set the course, I really tend to want to stay with the course. I probably should rearrange a little bit better, but let's do talk for the next couple of minutes on recharge. I think that recharging is very important as leaders, and I think it's becoming increasingly more important as the emotional fatigue that I see around the globe that's happening with leadership, or in leadership. For many years during the pandemic, I would say I think that there's going to be multiple facets of this pandemic, and I think the greatest, longest lasting one is going to be the emotional part of the pandemic. The realization that for months and months and years and decisions after decisions, we had no precedent to draw from. We were out front. We were taking pot shots. Everyone was questioning leaders because we were leading in unprecedented times. And that is emotionally taxing on a leader. And I will tell you that I think this concept of recharging is more important now in leadership than it's ever been before. Some people believe in a Sabbath. I know here at our company, I have instituted an organization-wide sundown Saturday to sundown Sunday policy. No emails, don't have work conversations. If you want to love on one another, embrace one another, have some fun, that's all good. Focus on your family, focus on your faith, focus on fun, recharge. I think that others find recharging in golf. I like golf, but I don't recharge because I get out there and think I'm supposed to be a pro or something. So I get mad at myself and I'm terrible. So it doesn't recharge me to go play golf because I get frustrated with myself. But I think for me, family is recharging. I think close relationships is recharging. Certainly traveling and talking leadership with John Maxwell is recharging to me. Here's my point. I don't think there is a set formula on how to recharge, but I think there is a universal need to recharge. So don't make my formula of downtime or family time or golf, if that's for you, but find something and get really systematic with it, get really consistent with it, and find a way to hold yourself accountable, because I think leadership in today's economy is taxing. And that taxing you emotionally has got to be combated with intentionality around recharging. And that, for me, recharging is for one reason. It's not to take a break. I hate breaks. It's not to sleep in. I despise sleeping in. Recharging is for one reason to me, because I want to make my future bigger. I want to make my future brighter, as we've been talking about this whole lesson. So recharge for the benefit of others if it feels too self-indulgent to you as a leader. Recharge for us, because we crave a future that is bigger and better than the past. Tracy, as we closed it out, I just kind of thought of, I love what John says. He says that what we focus on expands. And I just want to pause for a moment for you. And I want you to focus on a bigger future, a brighter future, a more effective leadership chapter in the days ahead. And as you begin to focus on that, I can promise you not only these 5 things that John has covered today, but you will begin to focus, and then you'll begin to have faith, and then you'll begin to have facts to back up the future being bigger and better than your past.
Point number 5, and we can close out, but I have one more question for you, and you can maybe close on this. But he talked about when he sought it, part of that, the anchoring pieces of the dream are needing to have a vision, a mission, and a strategy. And when you're so closely connected to those, because sometimes we can have this like pie in the sky idea or ideal, but they don't really have a vision, a mission, and a strategy. And so those are kind of the anchoring pieces that I think are important to have that fuel your passion and your energy and the success. But it kind of makes me wonder, I'm sure seeing John have that upset moment was encouraging for you to see that even John gets upset. That encourages me, because I feel like, that encourages me to keep on keeping on when I hear even John sees that kind of opposition and someone at his level of success, and he keeps pushing through because he's so deeply connected to the reasons and the purposing of his passion and his dream. But how do you learn? I mean, I'm sure having proximity to John, but how do you learn how to trust your gut with your dream? Before you have a track record, because you do have a track record, but you're also growing in your leadership and building that track record. How do you, Mark Cole, learn how to trust your gut in this process of everything's new to you in the passing of the baton?
Yeah, I've found that for me, this is not for everybody, but I think it'll apply to a lot of us. For me, the true, authentic, life-shaping, life-extending dreams that I have is always about others. I want success. I love success. I love nice things in life and privileges and all of that. But I got to tell you, the dreams that I have always do a litmus test of authenticity when I can make sure that the dream is about the benefit and the impact to others. Now, again, not everybody listening to this. This is a leadership. This is a personal growth. This is a leadership development podcast. And many of you are listening to become better. You want to be better. But when we're talking about dreams, I have found that the bigger the dream, the more it's about others, and the more it's going to take people to go with you, and it's not just on your shoulders. So the first thing that I would tell you is, Tracy, I always do the litmus test when I'm struggling to ask myself the question of the legitimacy or the longevity of a dream is, have I made this about me? Is this just about my success, my accomplishment? Because a good dream that benefits you is only going to be a great dream when the benefit flows through you.
Yeah.
And our responsibility in my first litmus test, when I'm struggling with a dream or a particularly difficult time that I've had, as we've all had in chasing a dream, is, have I all of a sudden made this dream about me, about my success, about my comfort, about my recognition? And oftentimes the struggle is more about my challenges than it is about the legitimacy of the dream.
Yeah.
The second question that I have to ask all the time is the dream worth the price again?
Mm-hmm.
In other words, oftentimes we dream big, we'll pay the price once, but when it doesn't work out, we give up on it. So I ask myself the question all the time, is my dream worth paying the price again?
So good.
Am I willing to get out there and go after it again? And then the third question that I always ask now, Tracy, you gave some great stuff about vision and purpose, and it all needs to be seated and rooted in that. This third question all comes back to my why, my sense of fulfillment. And I have found that oftentimes I re-engage with my dream when I realize that my sense of fulfillment is off just a little bit. That I'm chasing the wrong dream, or I've become distracted, or I've made the dream about me, and I've lost a little bit of my luster, not because the dream wasn't legitimate, but because the dream had not been polished off. I had not been reminded of the significance of what a dream fulfilled would be. And so today, as we kind of close it out, and I'm asking you the question, as John is, are you still seeking your dream? Did you tune in today maybe to get a leadership nugget, and all of a sudden you've been awakened to the fact that you kind of put your dream on a shelf? Well, number one, I'm going to challenge you to come back next week, because we got 5 more components of making sure that your dream is a successful dream, that you accomplish it. So come back next week. But the second thing that I challenge you to do is go back and listen to this podcast. Now that you know where we're going, I want you to go back and I want you to ask yourself the question, did I really think of this dream, or did somebody else think it for me? Was it my dream, or was it my parents' dream? I know I spent the first long period of my life pursuing my parents' dream for me, not my dream. And some of you have not reconciled that you're not chasing your dream, you're chasing somebody else's dream for you. Have you caught the dream? Is it deep within you, or is it still just a nice euphoric thought? Number 3, have you bought it? Are you willing to buy it again today? Is it time to take it off the shelf, blow the dust off of it, pull out the credit card, pull out the checkbook, and let's go buy it again? Maybe some of you are getting shot at. You're going, man, I thought it was just me. No, it's not you. It's the deadbeats that we all surround ourselves with. And yes, I called them a deadbeat. If they're shooting at your dream and not lifting your dream, they're on the wrong elevator, not you. Get them off your elevator. You're going up. They're trying to pull you down. And then finally, are you seeking it? And that's where I'll end today. I just end with this concept, this idea, this challenge, to be honest with you. Are you seeking the dream with the diligence, with the determination, with the certainty that you know you should have? John has been doing the last week or so, he's been doing this lesson that is absolutely one of the best lessons I've heard in a long time. And I get to hear John quite often. And the lesson is simply this, podcast viewers, podcast listeners. It's called the Success Stabilizers. Success Stabilizers. Now, isn't it true that you're listening to this podcast today, you're viewing this podcast today because you want some success in your life? That's what we found. We found that over 90% of the people that interact with Maxwell Leadership, they come for inspiration and skills resources to become better. So chances are 9 out of 10 of you are tuning in today because you want to be inspired with something, some nugget that will help you be a little more effective, a little more successful in your leadership. And so John says, but then when we become successful, something happens. We don't keep success in a proper perspective as leaders. We begin to let success be a little more inflated in its value, or we let success be a finish line that doesn't propel us with that success into significance. Success is what happens to us. Significance is what happens through us. And so John's doing this incredible teaching called Success Stabilizers. Now, it's his lesson, so I'm going to let him teach it, but I'm going to give you two, and then I'm going to give you the third one that's very apropos. It's very relevant to today's podcast. The first characteristic, or one of the things that really comes with success, is a bit of an ego. A bit of a swag, a little bit of a confidence to our step, right? I mean, Tracy, I see it.
Okay, I really hope that you are going to tune in and watch this on YouTube.
I gave
because
some
what
moves
Mark
there.
Just did. He kind of ventured into dancing almost.
Yes.
I'm not sure what that was,
Yes.
but I'm not sure it was ego, but it was a little bit of a dance. A swag was.
Podcast listeners, don't tune in, because very quickly you're going to understand I have a face for radio and I have a voice for the mute button. So do not tune in.
But you've got dance moves that they just got to see.
Yes. So it's this concept that, yeah, with a little bit of success, we get a little bit of an ego. We get a little bit of a confidence that if we're not careful, if it's not stabilized, we will allow that to become a detriment to our success rather than something that extends our success into significance. And so the stabilizer to ego is humility. We've got to constantly stay in this place of humility. That's why, Tracy, thank you for complimenting a while ago when I say John told me just yesterday, hey, Mark, such a great job on stage. Thank you very much. And I go, John, man, I don't know that I deserve this. I want to always, Patrick Lencioni, our friend, says that one of the key attributes of a great leader is humility. Humility, hunger, and a desire with skill sets and strengths. And I want to keep that humility. And John says that's a stabilizer to ego. He said, second thing that comes a lot of times with success is money. So another characteristic of success is we allow monetary things, money, bank accounts, growth, and nicer cars or things to indicate success. Well, money has a stabilizer in generosity. Don't show me how much money you have in your bank account. Don't show me your W-2 at the end of the year. Show me your giving statement. Because if you can continue to have this feeling of generosity, and by the way, a lack of money exposes generosity as well. I've met a lot of people that said, hey, when I make $1 million, I can't wait to give $100,000, $200,000 away. And I go, well, how much are you giving now? And when the answer is zero, I say, no. $1 million in the bank, $1 million of income is not going to make you more generous. It's going to make you more selfish. So a stabilizer to money is generosity. But then we go to the one, and I did teach a little bit of John's lesson. Still tune in because he's a lot better. But then we go to this stabilizer for another characteristic of success, and that is pride. There's a true, I believe, healthy pride. Something that really can make you and I thankful, appreciative, even respect the effort put into success. A sense of healthy pride. I certainly have that for my daughter Macy right now. She's just like killing it in some areas that I'd love to have more podcast time to tell you all about. There's a healthy pride. I hope it's healthy that's there. But when you get success and you have this sense of pride in your accomplishments, you need a stabilizer. And that's where today's lesson comes in, Tracy, because the stabilizer to pride is gratitude. Is the sense that I don't stand here alone. I stand on the shoulders of those that's gone before me. I don't stand here because of my accomplishments. I stand here because Javon and Jake in the studio with me is making this podcast what it is. Just the other day, Tracy, I was on a flight coming back to Atlanta, and somebody just kind of greeted me and like almost this, I know you, how are you doing? We had masks on as we do, still traveling, and there was just this brightness in his eyes, and I went, I think I might be supposed to know this person. And anyway, we flew on and didn't say anything. Well, we get off the plane. I had a problem with my bag, and she came up and she said, hi, my name is Sarah, and you're Mark Cole, and I know this because I view the podcast. And I went, wow. And by the way, Sarah, it was so good to see you on that flight. I wish I had more time to hear your story. But I went, wow, that's because of Jake. It's because Jake showed up this morning. Mark, don't get so caught up that there's a visual representation of the podcast that somehow means that Tracy and I are the drivers of the podcast. I stand here today, I'm actually sitting, but I sit here in the studio today as you do, Tracy, able to communicate hopefully value to you on the podcast because an army of women and men. I sit in the seat of CEO in the organization because Linda Eggers, not John Maxwell, Linda Eggers saw and appreciated the value of my leadership and put in a good word to the big man. She's been John's assist. She's been on John's team for over 30 years. And when Linda speaks, everyone listens. And when Linda told John, you need to check this guy Mark out that's been on the team for about 3.5 years, John began to see opportunities for me to continue climbing in the area of success. I never want to forget. I want my success today to be stabilized with the gratitude to Linda Eggers, to Jake, to Javon. I want to always stay stabilized in any successful things that I experience.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that maybe if you're listening, you know, sitting here in this chair, not in the same room with Mark, but feeling like we're in the same room.
Yeah.
And I always sit in this podcast and I take notes to myself. If you're watching, you see me looking down sometimes as Mark is talking because I'm learning right alongside of you. And I learn and I grow when Mark shares his application. And as he did, there were just a couple things that I want to share before we close out this podcast that really stood out to me that maybe will stand out to you as well. So I have been trying to practice what's in John's books, as Mark has, as many of you have listening in and watching on this podcast. But some of you, I'm sure, beginning, or maybe maybe this is gratitude is something that has been a sticking point for you, or an area you want to grow even more in. I know that generosity is something that I really pursue. I want to be known for generosity, and I would assume you probably do too, or gratitude. But 2 G words, I'm looking down because I wrote generosity. Let me just say, so if you're thinking that you want to pursue humility and generosity more, and whether or not that's just starting to put that more into your life, or something that you want to like really cultivate and have more and more of that in your life, how you activate that more. John really hit on that in his in the notes. So I hope that you print those notes out. But I heard something one time that really stuck with me, and I've tried to apply it, and I'm going to share it with you. They said, forget what you've, keep a short account of the wrongs others have done to you. And that's on forgiveness, of course. But the flip side of that, what's applicable today, is it said, keep a short account of the rights that you've done, the right things you've done for others, the times when you've been generous. Because sometimes when you're generous with others, that you can tend to keep a running tally in the back of your head of maybe what people owe to you. So generosity can have this weird flip side of if you do something kind for someone, you can think, well, they owe me because I've done this for them and I've done that for them. So not only should we keep a short record of the wrongs people have done for us, but we should keep a short record. Part of being generous is keeping a short account, a short memory of the right things we've done and the generous things we've done for others. And then the other things that he highlighted, that John highlighted, was keeping a gratitude journal. You know, if you're somebody who struggles with maybe a grumpy attitude sometimes, or when we all hit lows in our lives, it's nice to have a gratitude journal that you can go to and open up and look at all the times, the things that you are so grateful for. When your brain is tempted, when your mind and your emotions are tempted to really focus on the things that you are struggling with, and when you go to those things that you're grateful for and you read through them and you look through them, it just buoys your spirits. It makes you feel better. It makes you remember the real things in your life, not just these temporal things that are just popping up right now, because we're all going to have hardships. But really keeping a gratitude journal is something that I think is we're way less apt to complain if we really train our brains and put in habits, healthy habits of gratitude into our life. And so I'll let you close it out, Mark, but I'm just wanting to help all of us to, the key takeaways for me from this podcast is, are we practicing what John has put into his books? That alone helps us to be more grateful people, because he is such a grateful person. What about adapting old ideas to new challenges? What does that look like for you?
I think every organization, I'm certainly in one, we're rethinking big part of our business, one of our big events. We're rethinking, and I'm watching resistance sometimes come not because of a bad idea or creativity. It's coming because people are resistant to change. And sometimes resistant to change is bigger in people's lives than resistant to creativity. Because change everybody wants the creative. Oh, let's rethink. And then the sacred cow, the thing that has changed their life, the thing that they have already locked in that they would die for because it was so good, the formula is being tweaked. The change is being tweaked. Remember those of you that love Coca-Cola from Atlanta like me. I've had 3 this morning. Tracy grimaces every time I open one.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know you've had 3.
Maybe something like that. I want 3. Let me just say it that way.
Okay.
Coca-Cola tried something as an Atlanta person, as a lover of Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola tried something some time ago. They wanted new Coke, new and improved. Anybody in the studio, anybody remember that? New Coke? Okay, good. Good. I wanted to make sure it wasn't past all of y'all's age because I'm the oldest one in the studio right now. And then all of a sudden they realized it was a bad idea. It was a terrible idea. And it was. If you tasted it, it was terrible.
Right.
Well, then they came back out with Coca-Cola Classic. And for a Coke lover, it is so good. They don't even call it Coca-Cola Classic anymore. Do you remember when it was Coca-Cola Classic? This morning I went to Chick-fil-A restaurant. This podcast must be brought to you by Chick-fil-A and Coca-Cola. I went to Chick-fil-A, and you know what I ordered, Tracy? I ordered a Coca-Cola Classic.
Oh,
and the little 17-year-old said, "Do we have that?" I said, "Oh, yeah, you do. Just ring it up as Coca-Cola." But I was so thankful that Coca-Cola brought back my classic that to this day, 30 years later, 20 years later, I still order Coca-Cola Classic. Listen to you died. Well, in an organization, so many times people can be so impacted by a product, by something that they came to work because of this product, and now you have the audacity to put creativity in the mix and going to change it. And so what we have to really do as leaders have to listen to the concerns, ensure that the special ingredients that made it special in the beginning is not only going to be there, but it's going to be enhanced. And we got to take people along the journey with us. Creators, let me caution you. You can be so cool and so creative that you lose the essence and the support that you need to get a creative idea across the line just because you didn't take the time and include the good things of the essence into the creativity of something new. And it's not that it's a bad idea. It's not that creative wasn't good. It's just how you implemented it is leaving some people behind.
Yeah, that's right. So not that you have new Coke and old Coke, not that your ideas are you're going to something that's not really at better.
Yeah.
I think what you're going to is you are definitely, as somebody who's involved in it, you're definitely recreating and reimagining something better.
Yeah.
And pulling us into the future of something that's better and bigger and with the future in mind. But I think it's more about a change issue, not that you are taking something that's perfect and you're trying to make it better and it's not such a great idea.
Yeah.
As somebody is a member of that crowd, I think it's more a fear of change than anything.
A lot of times.
Yeah.
A lot of times
Yeah,
it is.
for sure.
Hey, speaking of change and creativity, let me leave you this one last standout statement. I do believe that creativity takes courage.
Yeah.
I believe for leaders to take the time to allow creativity to manifest itself, to be born into an environment takes courage, because most of us leaders have a propensity to do something, and creativity kind of sometimes feels like it takes a while. It takes courage to let that begin to develop. I think it takes courage to look at people that do want to fight for the sacred cow and say, no, we're going somewhere greater. We're going somewhere bigger. And I think finally I would say that creativity takes courage because all of us as leaders are bought into whatever made us successful in the position in the first place. And there's a tendency to feel defensive when somebody comes with an idea on how we can do something that we fought to implement, how we can do it better. Yeah. We go back and remember the battle scars. We go back and remember the pain. And I would just tell you that courage for a leader is required to allow creativity to be developed as a team, because there are better ideas on your team than you have.
Yeah.
There really is.
Yeah.
And if that's not true, you need to go back and change your team.
Right.
Because you need teammates that are making you better.
And you know, that goes right into the fifth point that John makes in today's lesson, that Coach Wooden paid attention to fundamentals and detail. I mean, John does a book. He's written a book for network marketing. He teaches all the time about the rule of 5. The 5 fundamentals, and we know John's because we've talked about it on this podcast before. Every day I read, every day I write, every day I think, every day I file, every day I ask questions. And John goes through this whole routine. He does it every single day. But you see coaches, great coaches, Coach Wooden certainly, great leaders, they figure out the fundamentals of what success looks like. They do those every day, and they allow themselves to have patience for the fundamentals to effectively and eventually pay off. I know for me, I started, Don, as you know, I started as a telesales person, picking up phones, dialing. I can still tell you to this day what, for 2.5 years, every day, what made that day was successful. It was 70 dials, which would lead to 25 people that I would speak with, which led to 5 people out of those 25 that would say, yes, we'll come to a John Maxwell event. You know why I can give you those numbers, and I hadn't done that for 18 years? Because the fundamentals of every single day going through that activity is what yielded results, and those results yielded to being promoted, and being promoted led to what I get to do today, and that's sit here with you, Don, and talk leadership. I go back to the fundamentals of success. Now, talk to me about what you noted in your time with Coach Wooden about the fundamentals of business, of the fundamentals of leadership.
So this is so directly on point, Mark. One of my favorite conversations with Coach Wooden one day was I was talking to him about practice plans around, like, how do you make sure that you're getting, because again, remember, there's a limited amount of time you're allowed to practice. And so you want to make sure that everything happens in speed and order, right? And you want to make sure that the players are moving from one place to another so that everything you're trying to cover is mastered at that time. And Coach Wooden had in his condominium one of those old library file boxes, right? You know, like when you used to go to the library way back in the day and you'd look at cards that would tell you where the book could be found. And in there, he had the practice plan for every day that he coached. He kept the plan, but they were 4x6 cards, and on it he had everything listed. And he did on day 81 of the season in 19 whatever year, he would do the exact same thing on day 81 the next year and the year after that. But every year he was always looking to improve it. So he had disciplines, he had structure to what he did. And that gave everyone confidence that he knew what he was doing, and it gave him security to build upon a strong foundation. You're not trying to recreate the wheel every year. And I love that. And I think that was a huge learning point for me. Develop those foundations. Develop those 5 things you do every day. Develop whatever it is for you, and then rinse, repeat, right? Rinse, wash, repeat, right? Do it, and each and every time you get to you begin that process, you just get more confident, you just get better, you just get stronger, and those around you gain more confidence in you.
It's brilliant, Don. Podcast listeners, I know we're going to get all kinds of comments from last week and this week, because it's brilliant how you're bringing this to life. We've all said this. This is cliche, right? Success is not an accident. Oh, it's so easy to say that. But when you talk about a coach that chronologically laid out and recorded what he did in practice every single day, every single week, so he could go back and reference it the next year to improve on it. Success is not an accident, podcast viewers, podcast listeners. You are going to have to be consistent.
We're a growth organization, and it does start with you first. And when you have intentionality behind it,
then it makes it very, very beneficial for you as a leader, as an individual.
Yeah, and I thought I'd just just break it down. We'll do it kind of quickly, but if you're interested in this topic and wanted the specifics of how to do this, I looked at really 6 things. I got them all from how John does it and how I've been doing it over the years. I'd love to hear your input on that, but starts with review, and then we review what's going on, reflecting, evaluating based on my criteria, deciding on the new year, and then putting a plan in place, and then executing are the 6 steps. And I know for me, it's not just, you kind of flow between the steps a bit, that you might review and then reflect for a bit and make an evaluation and then go back and review some more, so we can move between those. I might review a week of activity. You mentioned John going every meeting on his calendar, and that, to me, I don't go to that level, but I'm thinking about it, because how much could I do? How much more could I learn about myself? And the materials you need for this exercise is really your calendar or diary or any other records of how you scheduled your time during the year. Any like I said, if you kept a notebook, if you kept a call log, if you did those types of things, that might be helpful.
Yeah, I love what you just mentioned, which is you got to review something. And so it goes back to, let's talk about the first intentional act, is that you need to capture what you're doing on a daily basis. And some of us do that, some of us don't. Some use a calendar. Whatever, you have to develop a system. You got to be intentional about that in order for this to really work. I love your idea of, and it may be something I look at doing in the next year, which is sitting down at the end of each month and generating a list. And then at the end of the year, I'm going to have 12 lists that I can then review, because some of us can't remember what happened last week. And so I definitely got to have a system and how I capture it. But I love your idea to reflect at the end of each month and then create something that I'll review, one of 12 documents as we get to the end of the year. So when doing step 1, the review, I like to reflect. I like to evaluate. I think you can kind of do all those, to your point. They kind of interchange by asking some questions. And we gave you some high-level questions that John asked, but as you dig into it, here's a couple of questions for you to think about. Was that meeting, was that day, was that trip a good use of my time? Should I have delegated that to somebody else? Now, for me right there, I love that you put that there, because that convicted me, and I know that is something that I need to grow in. If you did delegate it, but you shouldn't have. That's not my problem. Maybe when we're sitting here a year from now, that may be my problem, but that's a good question to ask yourself. 3 more questions. Should you do more of this? Back to kind of what John was saying. Should you do less of this? And then what should you eliminate?
Yes, I love that. And then, the reflect part is, to me, is what worked, what didn't work. Being honest with yourself. I love this. We talk many times about having a daily habit of reflection, that you would, at the end of your day, beginning of your day, you would just think through what worked, what didn't work, what could I have done different, what did I learn, what would I do different the next time, and then really it's a 5-minute exercise. But in this instance, I'm reflecting on the activities from the previous year and seeing what worked, what didn't work, being honest with myself, evaluating. I think about ROI. Was there a return on the investment of that time with that person, that time on that call, that time in that meeting, that time with that speech? Was that a good use for me? Did it produce an outcome that I like? And John also, love your aspect. He doesn't just do business. He talks about personal, and this is really convicting to me, is, how would my work versus my family, how was that investment? Did I make enough of an investment? I travel, as you do, quite a bit, and how am I looking at that family work integration? Well, I'm not going to say balance, but integration.
Well, yeah, that's interesting, right? Like, does balance even exist? I think it can, and it should to some extent. John's approach, which we kind of have that DNA inside our organization, is that there's not necessarily a balance of a day or maybe even a week when it comes to personal, professional. But it is, hey, when I am with family, I am with family.
When you're home, be home.
When I am home, I am home. When I'm on a trip with my family, I'm on a trip with my family. And when I'm in the middle of something at work and it's go time, and this is something that my family's comfortable with, and we talk about it and they're aware of it, and so it's something that's probably become a learned comfortability for my family. But to your point, what's really important about what we're talking about here is the evaluation of your calendar and of your time. And then when you get to the end of the year, hey, where was the personal time? You can be all in on either, but at the end of the year, when you look at the big picture, man, let's make sure that that family, that personal side comes first, and that everything that you're doing in there it was beneficial and even enough.
I'm smiling because I was thinking about, I know when I'm in trouble on the balance question, when my wife, when the conversation starts with, I know you love your job, but I know you love what you do, but there's got to be some more there.
It's not the start of that sentence. It's always the but that you're waiting for with her, right? Yeah, you're like,
I know you love what you do, but
yeah.
Are you going to be home at all?
So as you're going through this evaluation process, here's some other additional questions for you just to think about. These are just simple questions, but they're starter questions that Perry's providing for us that I want to share with you.
They're all in the learner guide.
And they're all in the learner guide. Great. So if you're driving, please don't be writing these down. What did you enjoy? What were some of the proudest moments from that event, or just even over the year? What did you spend too much time on? What didn't get enough of your time? Boy, that's a great question to ask yourself. Really, personally, what didn't get enough of your time as you're evaluating that? In what areas were you especially effective? Where did you fail? What can you learn from your mistakes? So the key to this exercise is to use what you've discovered as you reviewed and reflected about your past to then inform as you begin to lay out the plan for the next year.
That takes us to the final 3 steps where decide, plan, and then execute. Once you got it, I love, John, something he said about decide once, manage daily. And I just think that so many times,
that's good.
I think about it a lot, is that am I making new decisions every day, every week, trying to remake the decisions, or can I just now in this exercise make a decision? And now plans change over time,
sure.
But my outcome, what I'm going for, remains the same. My vision for my year is set, but how I get there couldn't change. But I'm going to decide now in this exercise and then manage it month to month.
Yeah.
And some things won't work. I'll need to make a change. But this is where really putting intentionality, when you make these decisions and build your plan for the year, this is where intentionality pays off. I use this start, stop, continue is just a simple way that I've utilized. I forget who I got that from, but what is I'm going to start doing that's going to get me to the goals and vision that I have for the year? What I need to stop doing that's getting in the way, and continue is kind of the yellow light, the warning light that says let's keep evaluating, let's keep an eye on that and see if it's working. If it's giving me the return that I want on it.
As you think about this, I love what you just said about the comment where you make a decision once and then manage that often. Yeah. That goes back to, you can do that, even to the conversation you and I were and are having about what does your next year look like? What are the percentages of, what is it that Perry wants to be doing? What is it that is the best benefit of Perry, both personally and professionally? So make that decision. Now we're going to manage it, and I like what you said about managing it. Managing means, right, it is going to change. It's going to be flexible, but at least we have that framework to go with.
Just FYI, it's being tested already because the team is starting to book January, and we got January's book. Now we got February, and they're saying, "Do you want this?" I looked at my plan, and now it's time to execute, Perry.
That's right.
I made the decision. Now am I going to manage it daily? And I go, well, no, this is definitely where I should say no. But this is really putting it to the test. I made a plan, which I've never had the plan before. So now we'll see. I'm growing.
That's a lot. Bud.
Is this an intervention?
Yeah, that's right. Bud. It's good. Yeah. And this may be, as you're listening to us, you may say, man, this just feels so overwhelming. And it can become overwhelming if you want to go from 0 to 100 and all these things that we're talking about. But just start small. Develop a habit of doing this, whether it's something you do on a monthly basis, like Perry is talking about, whether you do wait to the end of the year, but have some intentional time to where you can focus and then begin to be strategic about how you are using your time in the new year.
And my final thought on that is that if you think there's value, and I will tell you there is value in this, is to begin to have that daily reflection habit and maybe make some notes weekly, monthly, as you go along, just as you're in the moment. When I finished, I just gave a speech over a few days ago, and I made some notes on the way home about what I thought worked, what didn't, working with the client, how were we prepared with me, just doing a reflection on that activity. Was that a good use of my time? I was with one of our team, Amanda, and she had an AAR, an after-action review, to say, what would we do differently in this situation if we were in that again? And so I just made notes, and nothing really to do now, but as we reflect on the whole year, I don't have to go back and rehash all that. So just an intentional act of beginning to collect those reflections and evaluations along the way. It'll make this year-end activity a lot easier.
That's great. Very practical illustrations that we're getting today on this podcast from Perry, and I appreciate that. So as I wrap up, let me just say this. I mentioned a minute ago about the fact that we're about personal growth. That's where it starts. Mm-hmm. This practice that we're talking about, this new year, new you, fresh start, this is a personal growth tool for you. And that's what we want to encourage first. The other thing is, as I was thinking through this, I was having a conversation yesterday with Valerie Burton. We were talking about resilience and just that and how relevant that is in the market today with everything that leaders and people and families are dealing with. And so I'm very excited about that conversation. But I was thinking about that conversation as I was reviewing our outline for today. And I thought, man, one of the ways that we can become resilient is to be able to see what we overcame the year before. And so as we reflect on the past year, if you don't go through that process, you went through a lot of stuff. You made a lot of decisions. There were a lot of ups and there was a lot of downs, but I promise you forgot 95% of them. I've probably forgotten 99% of them. But in this, doing this and having this practice allows you to see how really resilient you are and where that growth has come from. The last thing I'll say is one of the things that we do around here is that Mark Cole, our CEO, with the leadership team is like, hey, have a word for the year, and then I want context behind why. And so in that process is where I begin to think and reflect on what is that word of the year for me next year that is my sole focus. Mm-hmm. And back to your comment about that's the decision I'm making. Now I got to manage that daily. If I really felt like that kind of after reviewing my previous year, that's the word. So again, personal growth, it's going to show up how resilient you are as an individual and as a leader, and then develop a word of the year to go along with this.
Welcome to the Maxwell Leadership Executive Podcast, where our goal is to help you increase your reputation as a leader, increase your ability to influence others, and increase your ability to fully engage your team to deliver remarkable results.